It actually does look like it might have been written by AI, at least in part. But it was about Greta Gerwig's Chronicles of Narnia and her reboot, that it must avoid this one big problem. It's I'll read a bit of it here. Greta Gerwig's Chronicles of Narnia reboot must avoid, many problems, but it will be difficult to tackle the issues inherent to the books. While reading the Narnia novels, sometimes the way the world works and the magic and the rules of the magic system can be hard to follow. This is a major pitfall, as one of the most important parts of a fantasy series is the establishment of lore. Once the audience understands how the magical universe works, they can focus on the characters and the development of the plot. Moving forward, Narnia needs to focus on this aspect of the narrative. While Narnia is a richly imagined world, Lewis left something to be desired in his descriptions of the universe and the rules of Narnia. The novels jump around in the timeline and aren't released in chronological order. It makes it tough to keep track of what piece of information was dropped and where in the books the characters learned about it. The more minute details that flesh out a world like Narnia were less important for Lewis, as the author was more concerned with the story's allegory rather than providing information about the other lands in the realm. One of the harsh realities of reading the Chronicles of Narnia today is how Lewis doesn't go far enough in explaining how the world of Narnia works. Of course, Narnia is a children's series and shouldn't have the expansive world building and shouldn't have the expansive world building of a series like Lord of the Rings or Wheel of Time. But that doesn't mean everything can be left up to the imagination. While having no hard magic systems and knowledge about Narnia's many inhabitants meant Lewis could introduce new characters and plot points whenever he wanted, this also led to confusion and a lack of depth.
Oh, fuck off.
I mean, I would love to understand the physics of how you pass through a cupboard,
Right.
A wardrobe.
Oh God.
How does it work? Can we build? Are there other cupboards?
Also, how
Where
are these
the other
animals
cupboards?
physically able to speak? Is there some sort of
Yeah.
evolutionary progress that happened for wolves?
This is not Brandon Sanderson's fault.
Yeah.
This is not his fault.
No.
However, because of his genius and how good he is and how popular his books have become, which is phenomenal for fantasy.
Yes.
It has
It's
to
great.
happen. We have to have people like Brandon Sanderson.
Yeah.
But people are so obsessed with
Yes.
hard magic systems,
Yes.
with rules and regulations for how it works, that this is the brain rot, that this is fantasy brain rot.
Yeah, it really is. And I also think to a similar degree, RPGs and video games are influencing that mindset too.
Sure.
And maybe also influencing Brandon Sanderson. I don't know if he's a gamer at all.
He definitely is a gamer,
So then
but I don't know.
That's probably like a...
I don't know which
speaking
came
to
first.
C.S.
Yeah.
Lewis
Honestly.
didn't even have a Game Boy. That's not fair. Look, he had to imagine everything, okay? We at least had Pokemon to base
I
it
know.
on.
I do think, though,
He's not thinking about how much mana it costs to get Turkish Delight that's enchanted.
I do think a
know
lot
what
of
I'm saying?
a lot of people these days are wanting their stories to be like thought experiments, mostly, where it's just like thinking out which that's a part of it, but like they just want everything to be this like weird thinking out of these weird worlds and things. Where,
like Rings of Power.
I mean, that's a good point.
Like we should get the
Tolkien and
showrunners
Lewis
of
were
Rings
doing
of
very
Power.
mythic things.
Yeah.
They were doing like something mythic. It's just like it doesn't really matter.
Well,
like some of the stuff.
And confusing having or thinking that world building just means having things that are like explicitly spelled out.
Yes.
This is how it works.
Yes.
This is how it happens. I am going to say, and this is probably one of the only times that you'll ever hear me say this on the show, but author of this article, don't read Gene Wolfe. Just don't do it. If you can't handle the world building in C.S. Lewis, don't read Gene Wolfe.
The thing with Gene Wolfe, though, is he has a system of magic. He's just not telling you what it is.
And he'll never tell. He'll never tell.
I would like to challenge the author and say, rewrite it. Make it chronological.
Write your own Narnia.
Also, it's not that difficult.
No, it's not.
The chronological.
That's what's crazy to me.
It's most if you buy a collection now, it's going to be published in chronological order or it's going to be printed in the chronological order.
Right.
But even if it's not, it's not that difficult.
If you want to read it in the chronological order of the timeline, you can. it's actually not a good way to read it.
I mean, it's not called the Chronology of Narnia. You know what I mean? I said that wrong, but you know what I mean.
The Chronological of Narnia. No, it's not.
The systems and a systematic approach to Narnia.
Yes.
But like, come on, you're gonna say as an adult, you're gonna read Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then you're gonna read The Magician's Nephew, and not be able to put together that.
It was before.
This is a prequel.
Yes.
And this is setting stuff up, and look,
Right.
the professor is a little boy.
I do also forget that the Magician's Nephew is the 6th book. I always forget that. It's the second to last one he wrote.
I mean,
I always felt like it was earlier than that.
Talk about depth of authorship. Did this person read like the space trilogy? Because he totally goes into all of that stuff in the space trilogy.
But again, like this kind of
or any of his essays, which like nut out the definition of every word that he like begins to say. Like,
I don't think that this person read the books. I don't think they did, because like Magician's Nephew is the only one that you could possibly have confusion about where it is in the timeline.
but it's the
Because
best one.
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe
It's the best one. My
has
favorite.
the Pevensies.
Yeah.
Horse and His Boy has them as the kings and queens as adults.
So you know right where it is.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's set in Narnia during their reign. Prince Caspian has the Pevensies.
Yep.
Voyage of the Dawn Treader has Edmund and Lucy.
Yep.
And then it introduces what's his name? Their cousin?
Is it Diggory?
Diggory. And then Silver Chair has Diggory again.
Yes.
And then the last battle has the Pevensies again.
Yes.
So it's like
it's all there.
it's all there.
I
How
mean,
is that different? It's not
like,
difficult.
because I think it's J.K. Rowling's fault because of her system of magic that made enough sense to kind of, and it
See,
was very chronological.
I will
like,
actually
maybe.
say
literally school years.
Well, it is literally
Yeah.
it is literally chronological in order. But I will say that there is not a hard magic system in Harry Potter. It is very.
It's a very
What do you
soft.
mean?
Very soft.
Well,
It's
it's
kinda-
kinda
Expecto
in between.
Patronum is
No,
like
there are some rules, but also there are just like who knows.
It's kind of like
who knows what's possible.
force rules, where like
Yeah.
there are rules for things and there are very specific spells and everything, but it's kind of expanded with each book where there's more things
different
coming
things,
on, and
but they're also
there's not like a
whole
limit,
world of stuff
really.
that you don't know about.
yes,
Which
well, I mean, you can get it's Leviosa, not Leviosa.
not Leviosa.
yes, if it we do know pronunciation matters.
It does matter.
It really does.
But
Going along with this discussion and a kind of early little snippet of news, it has been announced that Saoirse Ronin has been cast in the upcoming Greta Gerwig Narnia series.
that's very exciting.
It is very exciting.
And we assume is the White Witch. What
I
is the
assume.
White Witch's?
And chronologically,
Actual
this picks
What
up
is-
right
is
after
it
the Barbie
Karis?
movie, right?
That sounds right.
picks up-
Right? Right. It picks up right there.
Wait, what?
It picks up chronologically. It picks up right after the Barbie
Jadis.
movie. Like,
Jadis, yes.
Yeah.
Jada Kiss.
Jadis.
No, Jadis.
Jada Smith.
Jada Pinkett Smith.
So
She's gonna be the White Witch.
Yes, it's the sequel to Lady Bird.
yeah,
Great. I mean, that movie was a cliffhanger.
That's the
so-
prequel of the White Witch.
That's kind of like a take on Horse and His Boy. They're doing a whole Shakespeare thing with it.
so yeah, Saoirse Ronin. It's not been announced who she's playing.
Well,
And has it been officially announced which book is getting the story treatment first?
Now that you say that, I don't remember, but I feel like it was at least kind of like put out there that they would start with Magician's Nephew this time, which on the one hand is like not the right way to do it, but because we do have the Disney versions from not that long ago,
Yeah.
that is why it makes some sense to me.
Dude, I hope it is because I think Greta would knock that out of the park. For Horse and His Boy, I mean, that's my favorite story out of all of them.
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
I haven't
It's
reread
so
it in a
beautiful.
very long time.
The
I thought you hated
trees.
horses.
Well, I do, but not this one.
Not the talking horses. That one and Mr. Ed. You don't.
No,
hate.
or Cloud
Well, I said
from
the same thing. I
from
did a
Wizard
reread. I mean, it was
Night.
like 12, 14 years ago now, but I reread them as an adult and did not really like Horse and His Boy, but it was very good.
That's fascinating
coming
because
back to it.
I still have I have not reread that one since being a kid, but I remember distinctly that myself and everyone that I talked to about it, you included, we all, I'm not going to say hated, but vehemently disliked Horse and His Boy compared to the other ones, and every single mom
Yes. The mom
Horseman's Boy
and
was their
all
favorite.
the girls we knew, I think, too.
I think I might be getting it mixed up with Magician's Nephew.
I think you might be.
You did say
Is
you
that
loved
the one with the trees?
Magician's
Yes.
Nephew is the one with the trees.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
that's the one. I do still hate horses, so I had to read.
And on that note, hello, Mike O'Vannon, and welcome to the Under Towers podcast. I'm Steven.
Yes.
I'm Daniel.
Sam.
And we've got a great episode for you tonight. Tonight we're going to be starting our discussions on our book club readings of King Arthur.
The King Arthur series.
The King Arthur series.
Excalibur.
But first, a bit of news, and we're gonna bring the temperature down here a little bit for our news today. As I think most of you know at this point who have been following along the podcast, we are from Middle Tennessee, and we're fine. Our families are fine. But if you've been following the news, I know we have some international listeners. I don't know if it's reached you guys, but over this past weekend, since recording our last episode, there was some truly horrific flooding. An actual legit hurricane came up from Florida and hit Florida very hard, but it hit our neighbors in eastern Tennessee and western North and South Carolina just devastatingly hard. There's small towns that have just been completely wiped off the map. Big cities like Asheville that were cut off completely from supplies and everything for days and are still without power and internet. So a truly horrific and devastating hit that the South has taken. And so just wanted to kind of put that out on the radar. And if you are at all able and interested, there's a bunch of great organizations that are helping. Samaritan's Purse is a relief organization. They're at least one of their branches is based out of Boone, North Carolina, which is one of the places that got hit hardest. I know it's hard. Some of the bigger places, obviously you can give to Red Cross and such and yada, but those are big organizations, and a considerable amount of your donation is going to go to people's salaries and going up that chain. So some of these smaller organizations are great. The Bitter Southerner, which is a phenomenal online magazine about life in the South, they have made a T-shirt where 100% of the proceeds from it are going to various local on-the-ground relief organizations. So yeah, if you're able and you're interested, there's a bunch of people that desperately need our help. In some places that we have been, in Lake Lure, where we spent a lot of time as a kid, just absolutely devastated. So there's some very good people that need our help. So that's our downer news for today. Let's bring it back up. Before we get back to our regularly scheduled program, a word from our sponsors.
Trying to get that summer bod. Just
In
not,
winter.
Yes.
A little late, but we're
getting there.
We're always trying.
It's never
We're
too
always
early
trying.
to start for next year, too. just not able.
This ad clearly had a lot of production revisions.
It did, and it's been in the pipeline for a minute. Just not able to lose those last few pounds. Is the struggle to get in shape just that, a never-ending struggle? The good folks at Worm Ouroboros Weight Loss know exactly how you feel. Gorys XII, the Witch King of Witchland, once weighed 20 stone before summoning the worm to eat itself in himself to help him lose those pesky extra pounds. And don't worry, he knows just the right incantation to banish the beast before it goes too far. His patented summoning spell has a 57% success rate to get the dragon inside you as opposed to outside. But don't worry, we can have the Demon Princes Goldry Bluzko and Brandick Daha available for a small retainer in the event of an emergency. Warm Ouroboros, like insurance, to chase him off. Warm Ouroboros weight loss can be the next step to a new you in no time.
I think people have
as
tried
always,
that
that's,
before.
That's code Under Towers for
Yes.
10% off your first worm treatment.
Yes.
So thank you, Worm Ouroboros
Ouroboros?
weight loss program for sponsoring tonight's episode.
The worm that eats itself.
And they have financing as well, I believe.
Oh, wait. Yeah, sorry. The slogan. The worm that eats itself stays itself or something.
That's a great slogan. Stays itself or something. Whatever. You're going to lose weight.
All right. So tonight we're going to take it back. We're taking it way back. This is the oldest thing that we have read as a group.
Yeah.
I know we read some older things technically, I think, back in high school, but...
Like the Book of Job.
Sure.
Well, that, yeah,
Sure.
I mean, and the Greek myths go way back.
Greek myths and Beowulf and stuff. But Beowulf may be kind of contemporary to some of these stories, probably.
Yeah. Beowulf is certifiably older, but probably there's some, yeah.
Yeah. So tonight we're talking about the Mabinogion.
Yay!
Or the Mabinogi.
Or the Mabinogi.
Well, so we'll get to that. So the Mabinogion is an anthology. It is a collection of ancient Welsh tales. I don't know that you would call these myths per se.
All this stuff
It's
really
not like
happened.
Greek myths. It's not like the Eddas or something for Norse mythology. But they're kind of somewhere between a myth and a folktale because there are some godlike creatures and beings, but mostly it's to do with humans.
Mm-hmm.
And so originally these, especially the four branches of the Mabinogi, we have no idea how old they are. They come, the Mabinogion itself was originally assembled by Lady Charlotte Guest.
Mm-hmm.
She was born in 1812 and died in 1895. So in the 19th century, she was, I believe, the first person to translate the stories that we now know as the Mabinogion into English.
Yeah.
And she took okay, pause. This story is extremely Welsh. And the Welsh language and the Welsh accent is one of my absolute favorites. It's gorgeous. It's so beautiful. And please bear with us. We're going to butcher it. We're going to do our best, but we're going to butcher it. So, as I was saying, Lady Charlotte Guest took the stories from the White Book of Rhydderch and then the Red Book of Hergest, and combined them into this anthology that she then called the Mabinogion. And she called it the Mabinogion because the first four stories from the White Book of Rhydderch, they each end with the phrase, thus endeth this branch of the Mabinogi.
Yeah.
Mabinogi is, I believe, essentially a Welsh or an ancient Welsh word that essentially means story.
Yeah.
And as an attempt to kind of pluralize that,
Yeah.
she called it the Mabinogion.
Yeah.
That's a scribal error. It's not real. That's not an actual word.
Mm-hmm.
But it sounds good, and at this point it's synonymous with this book of Welsh tales that is unfortunately largely out of the conversation anymore as far as like ancient stories.
Yeah.
But is extremely influential as we'll continue talking about. But it's 11 stories. We did not read.
Some versions have 12.
Some Lady Charlotte's has 12. It has
History of
the
Taliesin.
History of Taliesin. But because that's not part of either of those two original sources, it's not included in a lot of others.
Yeah.
We did not read Lady Charlotte Guest's edition this go around. I would like to at some point. The reason that we chose not to do that is because being from the time frame that she was, and I believe she was Catholic, or she was at very least a very devout Christian, she did some tweaking as she was translating and censored some parts of the book, specifically the sexuality. There's a lot of sex in this book. It's never explicit, especially in like a 21st century lens.
No, but it's, yes.
But it's referenced quite a bit. There's quite a lot of extramarital fun times.
And she just clearly had a very Victorian sensibility about it.
Yeah, and not like Queen Victoria, but like Victorian, the era.
Yes.
So,
because one of those got around a lot more.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
Oh, and just to note as well, I think we all listened to the Siona Davies audiobook version, which is a recent translation.
Yeah, and a
least
very
little
good
bit.
one.
Very good. And I can vouch for it. There's a free version of it on Audible.
Yeah, as of right now, when we're
yeah.
recording this, it's available if you have an Audible
and
account.
It's great. The language is very similar to the Everyman translation. Just some of the words, like one says breasts, one says like she was. Wait, I'm totally.
You got lost with breasts.
I did.
It happens to the best of us.
In the Everyman, it says, okay, here we go. We got it. It says, and he found a woman with breasts. And then in the new translation, it says, and he found a woman who was nursing or able to nurse.
Yeah.
So it's it means the same thing. There's something kind of nice.
I mean,
about
both are still surprising. Just
both are shocking.
Oh,
yeah. She's got them.
But that's
we're always
good.
surprised.
Yeah, so it is a great translation.
Yeah.
And the one that we read was the Jones and Jones translation.
Yep.
So again, 11 tales into one anthology. Some of them, I think you could probably, some of the Arthurian stories I couldn't. Some scholars would probably have a better chance of vaguely nailing down when they were originally written or told.
Yeah.
But the first four stories, the four branches of the Mabinogi, these ones I think are probably centuries older than the White Book, which was written in around 1350.
Yeah.
These are the ones specifically that I think the bards were telling centuries prior.
That's my impression that most of those are and I think they're when you're reading this, it seems like some of the last three romances, I wouldn't be surprised if those were much younger.
Yeah.
And that these were probably written in the forms we have them now, like 1100-y, something.
Well, the
the
Red Book of Hergest, which is, I believe, where the three romances and the four independent native tales come from.
Yeah.
Was written somewhere between 1382 and 1410.
Yeah.
So roundabout similar time period to when the chivalric romances of Arthur were being told in France.
Yeah.
So let's just go through real quick. So this list is how it is written out in the Jones and Jones translation. Yeah. Your mileage will vary depending on which translation you read, but the 11 stories are broken up into three sections. We have the four branches of the Mabinogi, where we have the story of Pwyll, prince of Dyfed, Bronwyn, daughter of Llŷr, Manawydan, son of Llŷr, and Math, son of Mathonwy. Those are the four stories, four branches of the Mabinogi.
Which Pryderi
is kind of the
through line.
Well, Pwyll and his son Pryderi are the through line.
Yeah,
that's kind of one of the fun things. The four branches especially have a through line of a kind of a family. Of characters and reoccurring characters throughout. And then you have the four independent native tales, which is The Dream of Maxen Vledig, Llwyd and Llywelys. Again, apologies to anybody listening from Wales. Culhwch and Olwen, which may be the oldest written Arthur story. And then The Dream of Ronabui. And then the three romances, which these are Arthurian tales. The Lady of the Fountain, Peredur, son of Efraug, and Geraint, son of Erbin. And Peredur is it's Percival.
Yeah,
so it's the story
pre
of
runner
Percival.
for Percival. Yeah.
I loved the Mabinogion.
Yeah.
It's something that I've wanted to read forever, and I've been familiar with the concept of it. I want to talk real quick about some of the modern things that we've talked about a lot in here.
Sure.
That we've all read our whole lives and that other people may have read that are all very directly influenced by the Mabinogion, and then we'll dive into the stories themselves.
Sure.
The way that I first heard about the Mabinogion was Stephen Lawhead's The Pendragon Cycle, which is his Arthurian retelling. And especially in the first book of that, Taliesin, the first three, I believe, branches are retold by various bards throughout the story. And then the whole story of Pendragon, which is kind of it fits. It's an extra book that fits inside Arthur, which is the third of the Pendragon cycle. Is a retelling of the story of Culhwch and Olwen, where instead of a literal boar, Twrch Twith, the boar in the story, it's Twrch is a barbarian,
Right.
Vandali barbarian with a giant boar standard who invades Ireland and then
that makes
Britain.
a lot more sense.
And maybe that's where the story came from,
Yeah.
Than being an actual just indestructible pig.
Right.
It
I mean,
is
that's a
pretty
great
cool.
story.
It's kind of what it is.
Yeah, it's a great
It's
story.
very Studio Ghibli.
The story also in Merlin, the second book in the Pendragon cycle, is the part of Llwyd and Llefelys, where one of the plagues in that story is the red dragon and the white dragon fighting underground, and that's utilized in Merlin.
Yeah, that's fun.
The Chronicles of Prydain, which we've spoken about several times,
Yes.
is extremely Welsh. It's pure Welsh fantasy, and I think every single name from the Chronicles of Prydain you can find in the Mabinogion, very similar to how Tolkien was taking names straight from the Eddas and the Kalevala for various dwarves and characters in Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
So yeah, lots of characters, lots of place names and things were taken directly from the Mabinogion. The Silmarillion was heavily influenced by the Mabinogion, and supposedly the name the Silmarillion is a play on the Mabinogion.
I wondered about that.
Yeah.
There is a certain similarity in tone. They do feel very different, but they're especially the beginning, the not the Quinta Silmarillion and not the Ainulindale, but the one that's before that, the name I space on, that is more like the mythology of the Valar building the world.
Right.
It's a lot. That's very akin to. Obviously, there's like a kind of a Greek myth thing happening there, but
For sure.
But there is that sort of like meandering just so story.
It's not the most direct
No.
one-to-one that you could make as far as Tolkien and other mythologies.
No, but it's there.
But it's there for sure. He for sure read it, and in fact, I cannot remember which one. It was one of the branches, I think, but I believe that there is in one of the universities or museums in England is a copy of Tolkien's translation that he had started.
Oh, interesting.
So, and then finally, this is maybe a reach, but I've seen other people talking about it on the internet, so it must be true. You guys haven't played Elden Ring, right?
No.
One very interesting thing that they did in Elden Ring was instead of going for a normal fantasy like English accents, most of the characters have Welsh accents, which is very interesting. And then my favorite character in Elden Ring is Blythe, who is he's Guts, but werewolf Guts.
Okay.
So he's like 8 feet tall, got a wolf head, big ass Guts sword.
Yeah.
And his name is Blythe. And the reason I say that this is perhaps a reach is I believe that the Welsh word for wolf is Blythe.
Okay.
But George R. R. Martin did a lot of the world building and backstory
For Elden
Ring. George R. R. Martin has almost certainly read the Mabinogion. And in the fourth branch of the Mabinogion, the third son that is produced in a wild way that we'll talk about is named Blythewyn, and he is a wolf boy.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a thing. That's got to be a thing
So it could be.
to some degree.
It could also just be that they're both,
Named the
Blythe is in both of those.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But it's fun and cool little, again, another little Elden Ring connection.
I like it.
So I'm sure that there's many more. There's another Lawhead trilogy that I think was heavily based on the Mabinogion. So yeah, it's maybe less so currently because it's not as well known and well discussed as a lot of other mythological things. I actually, at the beginning of this conversation, we were saying it's not exactly myth. I think a better comparison than mythology would be like the Odyssey.
I was going to say the same thing, but it's not quite as long.
Right.
So it's not really an epic.
Short stories.
It's short stories, very much like the Odyssey.
Because it's got the mythological characters in it, but it is more. It's that style of epic story.
Well, and especially the Mabinogi proper, the four branches.
Yes.
It's because they each have themes, but each one of the stories has like little, like usually 2 or 3 or 4 small stories within them too.
Yeah.
Where there's like a little narrative bit that then goes and then goes to the next one, and they're very zany. There's like introduction of magic and very. Like there's just giant talons come and like grab a horse and just
it's wildly creative.
Yeah, but just stuff you're like, okay, cool, like whatever, I guess. Like, which is awesome. I love how off kilter it is and just out there. Also remarkably funny, but
yes.
But yeah, it's they're fun, and there's a lot to I think to say for it being similar to the Odyssey for sure. And from there, do we want to start talking about these stories?
So we'll do some little mini discussions about each of these, little synopses of each of these stories. So the first of the 4 branches of the Mabinogi is Pwyll, Prince of Dyfed. And
just remembered this goofy stuff that happens in this story.
It's phenomenal. So
because the king goes hunting.
Yeah.
And then he runs into this dude and he's like, okay, we're like hunting the same stuff. How are we going to settle this?
And he has a dog that's like red.
Yeah.
Like I know him because his hound had like red ears or something like that.
Yeah. And then they're like, I'm spaced on the details. We read this a couple months ago, well,
I believe it starts with him. He kills a stag that a bunch of that somebody else's
the other guys
hounds are chasing.
So then they're like, how are we going to make this right?
It turns out that
it's the deepest offense you could do.
It's Anuin, Prince, I'm going to have to chop this a little bit.
Yeah, you're good.
It's Aran. It's Aran, Prince of Anuin.
Right.
It's his dogs, and he calls him on. He's like, bro.
Right.
That's kind of shitty to kill my stag that my dogs are on.
Right.
Just because I wasn't here to do it yet.
It wasn't just kind of shitty. It was the worst thing that he could have ever done to him.
The worst thing.
He's like, you've betrayed me to the nth degree. Like, this is the most brutal betrayal that's ever been happened before.
Yeah.
Like, he was pretty mad about it.
He was super mad about it. And so they devise a way to
make it right. Which is they're going to swap places.
They're going to swap places because Aran has this issue.
They're gonna Freaky Friday it.
They're gonna Freaky Friday.
That's their solution. Like, there's only one way that we can make this
for
right.
a year.
Yeah, I have to be you for you. You have to be me for a year, and that's how we'll get over this stag killing.
And he's having problems with his land. He's got to
fight a duel.
He's got to fight a duel, and he doesn't want to do it. And so he convinces Pwyll to take his place.
That, like, what's the guy even doing to his land? I don't feel like we really nutted out the problem. He's like, there's just asshole, man. He's just around every time he's there. It's bad. I got to get rid of him, man. And we have to fight him. But
it's kind of the. I mean, it's just it's just like
but there's like a reason
stuff.
that he can't do it, and so here's my solution. Yeah. And so they swap places, and so Aran takes Pwyll's place and rules over Dyfed, and Pwyll goes to Anuin and takes over Aran's place, and Aran has a super hot wife.
Yeah,
and Pwyll is a bro.
Yes,
and he does not take advantage of the situation.
He doesn't, and
she's very confused.
Yes,
because every night they go to bed and they have a great time during the day. They talk, they laugh, they do all the couple husband wife things.
Yeah,
and then as soon as they go to bed, she expects some action.
Yeah,
and he just rolls over and goes to sleep.
Yeah,
for a year.
But that was the funniest thing to me because they mostly talked about how he was a great ruler and all this stuff, and then like when they meet again a year later. And he goes home, and they swap back to their normal places. He gets back with his wife, and he's like, all right, let's get it on. She's like, wow, this is crazy. You haven't been this this way in like a year. And he's like, really? And he's like,
Quill is
he's
my
like, oh
bro.
shit. He's like, oh shit. He didn't have sex with you for a year. This dude is way doper than I thought.
He's definitely like, I assumed he'd be
I
banging
totally
you.
assumed.
He's like, I mean, I swap places. Like, oh damn, I forgot he's gonna bang my wife every night. But then a year later, he's like, he didn't at all. This guy is way better.
Was he banging Pool's wife?
Well,
That's what
Pool
I'm-
doesn't have
they
a
never
wife.
Oh,
yet.
right, he's not married. Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah, he doesn't
right,
have a
right,
wife
right.
yet.
That's part of
next.
it.
That's part
That's
two
part
of
of
this
it.
of the story.
Well, and Pool also kills the guy like pretty easily.
yeah.
too.
He fucks him up.
No, whoa. He does the one way you can get. There's only one way to kill him, isn't there? And you have to hit him once with one. Like, there's only one way to beat him, and you have to hit him once. And if you don't hit him and kill him on the first one, then he'll just come back again.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, yes, you're right because it's like
It's like a stupid thing. He's like, it's one.
He's
one
asking
hit man.
for he's asking for mercy, and you have to not give it to him.
Right.
You have to not finish him
Right.
off, and if you don't finish him off, then he dies.
Yeah.
So
Right, because that honestly just tracks with all logic.
yeah.
Yeah,
With that,
if
it's
he's
that-
about to die and you don't like actually kill him, then he'll probably live.
Yeah.
But then Pool gets home and they're like, everybody's like, dude, you've been such a good king.
You've been such a good king.
Like,
You've been way
everything
better.
is like, it's really great.
It's like,
Everything's
how
running so good.
It's like, how have I been this? Like, guys, how like sitting down with your team as a manager, guys, how have you been experiencing me? Like, honestly, dude, you've been the best ever, man. Like, I don't know what's
You've been
come
the
up with you.
greatest. He just rolls with it. He rides with it. And he's just like, that's awesome.
That's
He
so-
literally
I love to hear it.
he takes all of the credit. He gives none of it away.
Yeah, that's true.
Hey,
It's
you
like,
know what?
Great.
He didn't have sex with Aron's wife,
For
so
a-
I
for a
think
whole
he
year.
can take a little bit of credit.
What was he getting up
When
to
he
in
really
Quill's
could,
realm, though?
it really you could look at it that like he kind of it's like it's bro code. He did him a solid, but also like take care of the man's wife.
yeah,
like
for sure.
It kind of goes both
But
ways.
I mean,
She
he
was super dissatisfied for a whole year.
For a whole year.
or was she built up for a year? You know what I mean?
Okay,
there you go.
That's a good point.
They're like, I mean, some people like the tease, you know.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
Wow.
a tantric year.
Yeah.
Also,
wow,
though,
that's a good point.
Also,
point, Sam.
going
Thank you.
back, the thing with that story that shook me the most is that he got this guy to do all this shit for him just because he killed a deer.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
And but I feel like there's a
It ended
lesson.
up working
I
out
feel like there's a lesson in there though. Like, and maybe this is too deep, but I feel like Quill seems really young and impressionable, and then this other dude is like this kind of king figure, married, has like all his land and everything. He like takes advantage of this moment to bring a whole heap of like guilt and shame on this dude, and totally just twist it and like makes it so much more
I
serious.
think there's something to
The
that,
stake,
but it
the
does
stakes
work out.
are so it works out, but the stakes are so low.
Well, here's
He killed
one
a
thing I'll
deer
say.
that would
Here's-
have fed
well,
someone for like maybe 2
Well, I will
days.
say-
Here's something I'll say. As a hunter, if somebody else like shot the deer that I was actively hunting,
Yeah.
I'd be pretty pissed.
And there is
I wouldn't necessarily make them like do something for a year, but I'd want to.
there is also the whole like
no
don't-
inhibitions on
don't
this. So.
hunt on the king's lands thing, which I think is a later thing, but it's like poaching was originally like just hunting on lands that weren't yours. It's like it's
Which in the
Yeah.
UK is
a
everywhere,
yes, exactly.
So.
Yes.
especially in medieval times and earlier.
Oh yeah. So that's all kind of mixed up in that.
Well,
idea,
maybe
but-
my modern perspective is ruining this, and maybe there's a lot of things happening right now that people owe me. That's what I'm saying.
So then
Maybe so.
Pool
Somebody
gets
owes
married,
me.
right?
Well, he has to find a wife.
Finds
first.
a wife. Yeah. Oh,
And
right,
so
right,
in the
right,
second
right.
part of this story of the this branch of the Mabinogi is Pryderi wants a wife, and he's out riding with his bros, and he sees this beautiful woman on a horse, and he goes after her to see who she is.
Did we skip over the talons? Did we skip the talons? Is the talons in this one?
I think they might be.
I'm interrupting.
No, it's all right. But so no matter how fast he rides, she always stays ahead of
Right.
him and then eventually escapes past when his horse can continue riding. And this goes on and on and on. Like he tries
Yes.
it several times until finally,
Right.
after multiple attempts, he finally says, "Lady, please stop. I'm just trying to talk to you. Please stop." And that's when she stops riding and she says essentially, "Why didn't you just say that? That's the only reason why I never stopped was because you didn't say that.
Is this the one where she's like going and all these people are trying to catch up to her and they can't, and she's literally walking?
She's riding.
No,
but she's riding.
But not hard.
Not hard, but you could never catch her.
They could never catch
until he asks her to stop. Yeah. And so then she reveals that she is extremely sad and upset because she is going to be forced to marry this dude named Gwowel. Right. And she doesn't want to marry him. And she gets Pryderi, who obviously has the hots for her, to arrange a way to trick Gwowel into, trick her father into allowing her to marry Pryderi instead. Right. But there is a twist where at their wedding feast, between this woman, I'm blanking on her name. And Pryderi.
Is it Bronwyn?
It's Rhiannon.
Is it Rhiannon?
Yeah.
So it is Rhiannon.
Yeah. Branwen's the next story.
That's right.
Rhiannon. Yeah.
So at their at their wedding feast, this dude shows up. Pryderi doesn't know who he is. He's partying too hard. He's not paying attention. His guard's not up, and for whatever reason, Rhiannon doesn't say anything until it's too late. But this dude said, essentially, it's kind of the Godfather thing of like you can ask for whatever you want at the wedding, and you'll get it. And this guy asks, I need to ask something of you. I need a boon. And Pryderi goes overboard and says, whatever you want, if it's in my power, I'll give it to you.
Right.
And Rhiannon then realizes who it is. She's super upset. Says, "You idiot! What did you do?" And this dude reveals himself to be Gwowel.
Yeah.
And he says, I want your wife. She's my wife now. And they Trixie arrange it where, like so many of these stories between this and Mort Arthur, it's a year from now.
Oh, wait. We'll wait a year.
We'll wait a year, and then we'll have another wedding feast.
Seems reasonable.
And so they she comes up with a plan. She tells Pryderi she has a plan. And a year later, they have another wedding ceremony between her and Gwowel. This time, Gwowel's at the head of the table, and this old beggar shows up. And he's begging for food. And he asks for just enough food to fill this little bag that he has. And so Rhiannon begs her new husband to
and if we want to get hung up on like the rules of magic, it's
it's a bag of holding. Do you remember?
Yeah, it's like Hermione in the last book. She has that bag and she can put anything in it. It's like that.
Exactly. But they don't know this, or Gwowel doesn't know this, and so he just keeps putting food in there, and he's getting more and more pissed off because of how much food.
Takes more food.
And this
goes,
old
sir, when will this bag become full with food?
And the old beggar says, sir, it will only be full when a man of high standing sits his foot in the bag and steps upon the food. And Gwowel falls for it like a fucking chump.
Well, I mean, honestly though, that does make sense to me because have you guys ever like filled your trash all the way up?
You gotta step it down.
You gotta stomp it down. Like, so I'm like, he must be like, oh,
right, yeah, totally. Okay.
That's what it is.
And so he goes down and he puts his feet in the bag to step down.
How much food do you think he put in there first though? Before he started to get alarmed.
He put a lot of food in.
Like the most of the feast.
It's like a tiny little bag, and he's putting whole
we're talking
gooses,
like 100 hams,
little birds,
100 geese.
Yeah, he's putting a lot of shit in there.
Vines.
But can you just imagine just being cordial in that moment, like, when do you think this thing's gonna get full? After stuffing 100 hams in there.
I feel like I'm being generous. I've been generous enough here.
Like, come on, man. When is it gonna
But so then it's revealed that the old beggar is actually Pryderi, and he lifts the bag up and ties it around to where Gwowel is now stuck in this bag, and then they play Badger in the Bag.
This the first time Badger in the Bag was played.
Which strangely enough, it's like, did you know the first time they played Badger in the Bag, it was actually a dude.
Yeah.
It was not a badger. We don't know why we call it that. It's actually dude in the bag.
It's a dude in the bag.
It's dude in the bag.
But yeah, similar to...
Wait, and to describe how you... Well, in this story, do people play that game anymore? Because in this game... It seems like you trap a badger in a bag and then you just kick the shit out of it.
Just kick the shit out of it.
Everybody has it's like a piñata.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
But except there's no candy at the end. You just sort of kick this badger.
I'm guessing with Badger in the Bag, you eventually let it out and let it like be mad.
Probably. You let it out, and then you have to.
like, run
it's like
away.
then it's a rodeo
this
game.
guy's crazy.
And it's a rodeo
Yeah.
game where whoever doesn't get fucked up by the pissed off badger wins. But
badgers don't play.
Here's another possible Tolkien nod to the Mabinogion. Well, it's the way that the Mabinogion says, "Oh, and this is the first time the Badger and the Bag was ever played." It's very much like, and this is how a bull roarer Took invented golf.
Yes,
it's like just kind of almost throwaway like, huh. So they're kicking the shit out of Gwowel in the bag. And he.
This is my favorite bit.
He begs for his life.
Tell
us, Sam. This is your favorite part. Tell us.
He says, "Guys, this is not a way for me to die." From inside the bag, and they're all like, yeah. Oh, huh?
Oh, I guess not.
This is pretty humiliating.
And so Pryderi offers to let him out.
Yeah, he's not cruel, not without mercy. He
So
just doesn't want him to marry the lady.
As long as he promises to give him his wife back. And he makes the promise, and Pryderi wins. And
This poor guy, he loses his whole feast. He gets tricked into this bag. He just gets the shit kicked. And who was kicking him? Probably all his subordinates are like, he's in a bag now. Let's go. And then at the end of it, he loses all his food, his lady, and he has to come out of this bag all beaten up. And I really feel for Gwowel.
Yeah.
Also, are we correct in Pryderi, or is it's Pwyll the whole
It's
time?
Poish,
isn't it? Yeah,
isn't
I keep saying Pryderi. Pryderi is his son, I think, who
It
is
is.
then born in
Pryderi's
the
his
final
son.
Yeah, no,
part
he's
of.
born at the very end.
Isn't his name Poish or is it Pwyll?
Who knows, man?
It's
again.
something.
It's technically the two L's would be a.
So he's
So
he's Papa P is what we're going to say.
So it is
So
something
I-
like
Yeah,
it's something like that, but we don't have to say that.
I'm just gonna say Pwyll. I'm sorry. Apologies to Wales. Sincere apologies. I'm not making that up. But then the third and final part of this first branch of the Mabinogi is kind of messed up.
Yeah.
To the point where I don't even want to talk about it a whole lot. But it's Rhiannon gives birth to Pryderi. The baby is stolen.
Yeah. That's where the claws come in.
Yeah, and the claws come in, steal the baby.
Yeah. And it is. It's
kinda
just
out
like
of nowhere.
2 claws.
And all the midwives instead they get drunk and the baby is stolen because they're drinking, and instead of just owning it, they
Although, what
say
could they
that-
do against the Talons? We don't know.
I mean, they could have kept the baby away from the window.
Well, I guess that part.
But they're
Window
just not paying
access.
attention.
fair.
And this is the first time we recommended cribs not to be near the window.
But they come up with this whole story about how Rhiannon ate her baby.
Yeah.
And that's why the baby's not there anymore.
Yep.
And Rhiannon ends up getting, because Pwyll believes them instead of her, and doesn't just think, oh, maybe someone stole the princeling. And Rhiannon,
She must have eaten him.
She must have eaten the baby. That's the only possible explanation.
I mean, we lost all the food at the feast, so
who smell of booze lie.
Yeah.
And so she gets condemned to she has to sit at the gate every morning to the town and tell every single person that comes in what she did, which she didn't do, and then carry them wherever they want to go.
I forgot that
on
part.
her back. And this goes on for like
probably a
15,
year, right?
No, a lot longer than that, because I guess he's still a child, but by the time that eventually another family rescues baby Pryderi, they raise him up, and then they realize who they have, and they bring him back, and he's reunited with his family.
Yep.
And Rhiannon doesn't have to keep having this punishment.
Yep.
But it's also kind of like there's not like a serious like, oh my God, I'm so sorry I forced this on you for the last however 15 years.
Yeah.
So it's messed up.
I did find it very sweet though that I believe the foster family continues to take care of him too in some degree.
I think it's the reverse too, that he takes care of them.
That too. But it's actually very sweet because
that part is very sweet.
That part,
his foster family is allowed to continue being a part of his life. Which that is very nice.
Because he's really huge too. They say he's like a huge baby.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
He's a big baby, and then by the time he's like 5, he looks like a boy of 10. And
yeah,
at every age of life, he's like huge.
He's a stout lad.
Yeah.
So that thus endeth the first branch of the Mabinogi. Then we have Branwen, daughter of Llŷr. And this is another kind of messed up story in a lot of ways. But I'm blanking on the names of a lot of these characters. There's a lot of characters.
There's a lot of characters.
Evil uncle sabotages the good relations between Wales and Ireland.
Yep.
By killing these horses that were a gift from Wales to Ireland. And
That's part of the story is so funny when they're like, it's pretty messed up. They killed those horses.
Pretty messed up.
And then he's like, and then they're like, they make it good, but then he goes back home and they're like, bro, it's really messed up. They kill those horses, man. Like, you kind of can't.
You kind of can't just make
You're right,
nice.
dude. It is. It just reminds me of a lot of in Step Brothers when Seth Rogen's like, now the tuxedos seem a little effed up. It's like that. It's like, wait a minute. It's kind of screwed up. You killed my horses. It's kind of like, you're like, oh, I can kind of move on. It's like, dude, it's weird that they did that. It's really weird. Even though it's like the one rogue family member who's offended.
Yeah.
But who's like actually in love with his own sister kind of thing. It's kind of.
And everything else is not weird, but that.
It's weird.
Like, why you go out of your way? Like this?
So
Oh my gosh.
because of that, the princess Bronwyn,
Yes.
who was married to this Irish king, is similarly to Rhiannon, is subjected to serious indignities,
Yep.
treated lower than a servant.
Yep.
She gets word back to her brother and the armies of the Island of the Mighty, which is a sick-ass name for Britain. They make their way over to Ireland to kick ass and take names. And there's a big fight. The same douchebag uncle that punches all the horses to death. Yeah. The Irish warriors are hiding in these bags, and he goes through and squashes their heads, which is like, on the one hand, that's also pretty messed up, but it is. We talked about it is a little funny.
It's pretty.
The
funny.
idea of like sitting in these
like
bags.
Waiting.
It's very Monty Python.
But when they're done, then they throw the bodies in the cauldron, and they come back to.
Which there's a
life.
big Chronicles of Narnia reference for you, is the cauldron that brings warriors back to life.
The squishing of heads is so weird.
It's messed up, but
Also,
pretty metal.
they know that it's happening. They're just sitting there like,
shh, don't tell.
he might not keep squishing them.
The story is, they end up overcoming and you may have more things you've wanted to say about this, but they end up overcoming the cauldron. They do it. Then it says they basically kill everyone in Ireland except for 4 women and 4 people. So they just like all keep mating with each other.
Oh,
And
that
that's
bit
the
of his like.
and that's the beginning of the Irish people.
It's very.
Like, whoa, what?
It's
Well,
not
no,
propaganda
in a
at
cave.
all. It's like,
All the sons started having like sex with each other's mothers.
it's a very Welsh centric take
It
on
is.
the Irish people.
These dirty Irish people. They're all just incest monsters
It's-
because we killed them all.
It's like
It's even funnier because I'm predominantly Irish.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
for
me
sure.
too.
Yep. And that part reminds
That's
me
a
of
just
like
those stories, like, and that's why the Irish are terrible.
it's like reading or watching Henry V as
Yeah.
opposed to like actual history where it's
Right.
like, yeah, we fucked those French guys up. Those Frenchies. We just walked all over them. Are you kidding me? It's very one-sided telling
funny.
of that story.
Oh my god.
No, I didn't have anything else for that
Yeah.
one, honestly, because I want to get to the next ones.
Yeah.
So I think I speak for all 3 of us that this is probably our favorite, right?
I loved it.
So Manawydan, son of Llŷr, the 3rd branch of the Mabinogi, is one of the funniest things I've ever read.
True.
Oh, is this the one with?
Yep. So it starts off with some of our characters from the last story, through a bunch of various court shenanigans and betrayals and backstabbings. This group that should have been in line for the throne are no longer in line for the throne, and they're in fact kind of refugees in their own kingdom.
Yep.
And they try to make a living by taking up various trades in various towns.
Yeah, first they're making some shoes.
And they're really good at it. They're
But then
making great shoes.
And people are like, screw you guys for making shoes.
Sammy's like, we're getting too good at this. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to want to kill us.
And they're right.
Too
And
good
they're
at making
freaking right. Can you imagine
get so
like
pissed
going
off.
into a town, getting real good at trades, like, they're going to hire assassins now. Like,
Yeah, they're going to come and kill us.
Like,
Then
the
they're making
stakes are that high.
shields.
Yeah, and they're really,
They're
really good at it.
really good at making
They're
shields.
making great shields. So great.
Which again, they're not. No, the populace is not happy to have great shield makers in town, though.
No, the shield and
furious.
specifically the other shield makers are
guessing it's
furious
mostly
because
those people.
they're
yeah, so
They're making better
like
shields.
The kind and humble people there, they pivot yet again to create saddles.
Yep.
Right?
And
Yeah.
they make
They're saddle
really
makers.
great saddles.
Yeah, like
Such
the
good
best,
saddles.
The best leather work, all that.
And they yet again get run out of town. And finally they decide to just start up a farm.
We're gonna just plant some grain.
They're just plant some grain.
So when it comes time to harvest the grain, they go,
Oh,
and
it's
the
this
grain's
story.
the grain's all gone. The day it's like perfect. And they're like, what the heck? Goes to the next day. Well, this field's ready. Go harvest that. They show up the next day. It's all gone. And they're like, what the heck is going on? How's all our grain gone? They go up the third day and he's like, okay, I'm going to go watch the grain overnight. And he gets there and he sees like an ocean of mice going all.
Also, wait, on that though, it's weird that he didn't say, let us wait 1 year until I go out there and wait every night.
Right. Well,
You know?
because it's not every field's ready right on the first day.
I'm just saying,
so-
most
saying
of their
according
approach
to
to
the-
any sort of solution making is
Right.
like,
just wait a year.
we have a problem. Let's see if this continues for 1 year from
wait a-
today.
wait a
He
year.
was more proactive.
He was.
This one, he was more ready to
Yeah,
go.
you can tell they've evolved a little at this point.
But he sees an ocean of mice swarming over the grain. He's like, oh my goodness. And they're
What a
stealing all of
sight.
it.
What a
He runs
sight.
up, though. One mouse is a straggler.
Yeah, they
Catches-
might start running away, but
Yeah,
they're-
he
but
catches-
one he's
he
able to
catches
catch.
one mouse.
And he said
This
it
fat
was
little
because
mouse.
it was fatter. It was easier to catch. It
Yeah.
was slower.
Fat mouse. So then he comes back. And he goes to his wife and he says, I caught the thief.
He catches it, but he like obviously has taken it captive. Not so much as like a mouse trap, mind you. Like he has taken a mouse
Prisoner.
captive.
Yeah.
It's a prisoner mouse.
So he comes back to his wife and he says, I have caught the thief, and between me and God, I will give the justice a thief deserves to this mouse. and
he
wife's
builds a-
the wife is like, dude, you should not touch that mouse.
Everybody he talks to is like, man, gross. It's a freaking
You
mouse.
should
Get
not
rid
touch
of
that mouse.
But
please let that mouse. And he says,
builds
between
a-
me and God, I will hang this mouse.
He builds a scaffold
And
to
he
hang a
builds
mouse.
little scaffold.
And
and he's standing there with the mouse, and then the story
every time he
continues.
has to justify it
He
too.
keeps
Between me
running
and God,
into a
I
different
will hang
person.
this
It's like
mouse.
a townsperson who's like, dude, what are you doing with that mouse? Please let that mouse go. Well, it's always like, what is a man like you doing touching a mouse? Like, don't touch that mouse.
They said it's like a man of your stature should not be touching a mouse.
He's like,
He's like, fuck that, I'm gonna kill
this
this
mouse.
mouse.
Is a thief, and between me and God, I will hang this
I'm gonna
mouse.
hang this
They're
mouse.
Like, please. And then it's always, please do not hang that mouse. And he's like, between me and God, I will hang that mouse. And then he talks to a priest. And the priest is like, please, dude, it is really bad. It's bad to hang a mouse, man. Like, don't hang a mouse. That's so weird. And he's like, no, I'm gonna hang
this mouse. God
So
can sort it out.
Finally, this,
Between me and
this
God.
like noble of the town shows up and is like, please don't hang that mouse, man. Please don't.
Well, he's like a
hang the
wizard
mouse."
too.
And he is. He's but that's not revealed till later.
Okay.
Which your
Spoiler
friend's
alert.
fine.
Wizard.
Spoiler alert!
Wizard shows up.
But they're like, please don't hang that mouse, dude. And he's like, I'm going to hang it. Between me and God, I am hanging this mouse. And then goes on and he's finally like, okay, I'll pay you like a lot of money. And then he keeps saying, I am not hanging this mouse. Keeps raising up the amount of money to like huge sums of money to not hang the mouse. He's like, dude, I am not. When finally he's like, okay, like, what do I seriously have to do to get you to not hang it? I will like literally do anything for you to not hang that mouse. When then he goes on to bargain, like to reveal and to bargain away both their like standing in the community to do that. And it turns out the mouse is the wizard. It just revealed he's a wizard. The wizard has turned his wife into a mouse who is pregnant, And the reason he
That's why she was fat and
that's
slow.
why she was fat and slow. So he went.
Well, all the townspeople got turned into
But
mice.
all the townspeople,
All
were
of them.
turned
So
into
everybody that was
but
coming and saying, "Please don't kill that mouse."
yes, all knew that it was a woman. In that different sections of the town, because it said it started with one section of the town. The next night, because the people keep showing up to the wizard saying, "Please turn us into mice so we can go eat their field." And so the man's wife had shown up and said, "Me and all my lady friends want to go eat their field too." And
It's
he's like,
girls' night. It's girls'
"Go."
night. We need girls' night out. We're
It
hungry.
turns out then bargaining, the man wants to free his wife. He bargains away, and I'm spaced on the details of what he bargains, but he bargains their ability to stay, the fact that the man won't enact retribution on them.
Oh, and they'll never do like a curse again.
They'll
on the
never
land,
do
yeah.
a curse, and they'll allow them to be at peace. And he's like, "I'm glad it's really good you didn't allow me to have retribution on you." But then they work it out, and he gives the man his wife back. I just
So good. It's so funny.
Every time I was just reading it, just cackling. It was like, between me and God, I'm hanging this mouse. I don't know if the guy realized that something magical had happened and it was a person. It's possible he did, but
I don't think
it
he
reads
did.
he's just like, "I'm so mad that this mouse will suffer. This mouse will suffer and die and pay
Well, it's
justice."
like they've been kicked out of every home they've had recently for
It's
just
his- it's
doing
his-
good
it's-
work.
It's his last. It's his last
Like
straw.
like bro has snapped a little bit. And you know what?
They really are. To bring it back to mice, they're like the Five-O Goes West mouse.
Yeah,
the
it's very
Five-O
cute.
The Five-O's mouse. No, the family.
Yeah.
They're ostracized.
Oh, yes.
They've
There
been
you go,
subject
yes.
to the Welsh version of pogroms and just
they're
being
kicked out,
kicked
and,
out.
attempted murder
Yeah,
everywhere
I
they
know.
go.
It's terrible. So yeah,
Between me and God.
And thus endeth the third branch.
third
of the
branch of the
Mabinogi. And the
Mabinogion.
fourth one. This is the one that we referenced with Blythe earlier, and this one is
Math, son of
this is
Mathaway.
wild. So
This is one
Yeah.
where Perderi kind of just kicks ass most
well,
of the
no,
time.
this is Math, son of Mathonwy, who is a couple steps down the ladder. I can't remember exactly how he's related to Pwyll and Perderi, but Math is the king. His nephews,
Yep.
Gwydion and I can't remember the other character's name.
I
but
looked
his
it up. I
brother.
tried to find it and I can't remember. It was like Gooflu or something like that.
They assault a young woman,
Yep.
and
And there's some other things that happen before that with
there's
armies. but-
yeah, they steal the pigs. They bring the pigs.
Yeah.
The
The pigs are a big part of these stories.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of shenanigans, but the bad thing is that they assault a young woman, and as penance for that, Math is pissed off, and he turns them into for 3 years various types of animals, but always a male and female version of said animals, and sends them off to live as those animals for a year and copulate as said animals and to bring him the child that they create. So these two brothers are turned into animals, forced essentially to live together and copulate and create a baby together. And then every year they come back, they bring the baby back to Math, and then he turns them into a different animal, but swaps the gender roles for each of them.
And this was the first episode of Black Mirror.
Yeah. And they make another baby for a year.
Yep. And each time Math takes the baby in, names it something related to the animal, but then turns it into a person.
Yes.
And then it's kind of hinted at that these are like mythological special people, but then nothing really, we don't ever really hear about them.
I
again.
suspect that there probably were other stories, and it was part of the oral tradition and just did not get written down.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. There's not much more to say about that one.
Yeah,
It's pretty
it's
wild.
goofy. And then from there, the lady, she has another kid, and they make a woman out of flowers. That was that lovely.
Yes,
that part was beautiful.
Part was truly beautiful. Yes.
And they after they go through that, they do actually do a whole because the woman made of flowers is to be Gwydion's wife. Because after all that, they're they've been through enough.
Yeah.
and they kind of allow them back into society. But then the coda, the end of that story is quite nice.
Yeah. So, thus endeth the 4 branches of the Mabinogi. I would say the 4 branches of the Mabinogi are my favorite part of the Mabinogion. There's a couple other stories that I love very much in this, but as like a whole, I would say that's my favorite section.
So it is the zaniest and it's also like even it takes such sharp twists and turns, but it's also like it works kind of as one thing.
Yeah, there's a through line through
Yeah.
it, whereas most of the other ones
Yeah.
are fairly standalone stories.
I don't know. My favorite, I don't.
Well, let's talk about the other things and we can come back to this. So
Yeah.
this is going to be a little bit briefer, I think. I don't think we're going to have as much to say about each individual one of these stories, but the 4 independent native tales are next. And the first of those is the dream of Maxen Vledig. Maxen Vledig is a Roman emperor in this story.
Born in Spain,
Yes. And
an actual
he
Roman
is,
emperor.
yeah, and he
as
was
well.
a character. He's this is another Lawhead reference. He is a character in Taliesin in the first book of the Pendragon cycle. Maximus, they call it Maxen Vledig, being his kind of Welsh, his British name that is given to him. And it's a story about this Roman emperor who travels to Wales because of a dream that he had of a beautiful woman.
Yep.
And it's fun. It's a fun story.
It's a great little story.
Great little story. Any thoughts?
Beyond
It's
that,
great.
no,
It's fun.
I
It's a good
really
story.
enjoyed it, but that is basically it.
Yeah.
He has the dream and then he goes there and or he actually sends guys there.
Right, but it was
And
it was a
they end
kind
up
of a
seeing the exact thing in his dream.
yeah, it was a
Basically,
premonition
it's
more
great.
than like a
it's great.
normal dream.
Yep.
So
That's great.
Then Hlud and Hlufelis
I really like this one.
was a great one. In essence, there's 3 different curses that are afflicting
Oh yeah, this was cool.
whales,
And one of them is just a bunch of people that can hear good.
right.
So you can't get them out.
But
You can't get them out because they always hear you walking up.
That was the funniest one. It's like the first one is like obvious how to fix, but the next 2 are a little bit more nuanced.
Right.
Like when they're describing how to get rid of the curses.
That being said, I do think the Coriniad is a mythological people thing.
I think so.
But, yeah.
And the dragons part is cool. The
It's
the
awesome.
2 dueling dragons underground,
'Cause there's-
and having
there's-
to trick them with
yeah,
mead.
the-
And
But
The
the curse that's actually on the land is they just keep hearing this crazy ass screaming.
They hear this screaming
Right.
and they're
like,
like,
God,
yeah.
what is that
going on?
freaking noise?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's always
well,
dragons
two
fighting
dragons.
underground.
Then he
doing-
says, find the exact center of the country, get the best mead you have,
Hell yeah.
go there, and you'll be able to solve your problem. And then they dig a pit, and turns out, the screaming that everyone's hearing and is terrorizing everyone is this red and white dragon who are fighting every day. But then they set the mead in the hole, and then the dragons come down into the hole and turn themselves into pigs.
Well, but they have to put a blanket over it or something.
Yes, well, and then they start drinking the mead and start falling asleep, and then they cover them with a blanket.
And then they're just kind of covered for.
I don't know why they turn into pigs, though. I guess it's to fit in the hole.
I don't know. I could be totally off base. I was reading a little thing about how a lot of these stories, and I'm going to guess that this is one of the main ones, kind of reflected a general fear amongst the Welsh of the colonization of the English.
Sure.
And the red dragon is the symbol of Wales. So
Right.
I have a feeling that this was very much
I think there's something there for
a
sure.
story of that. But that's also a great one. Then there's
Well, and the last plague was a mighty mage who
Yeah.
puts everyone to sleep.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can,
got to you can't have that. You
can't have that.
those mages, man.
No.
You got to keep your eye on them.
At least he wasn't making them into mice.
This next one is my favorite one of the 4 independent native tales by a long shot, and that's Colhook and Olwen. Colhook is a great name.
This is
The
my
spelling
favorite
makes
too.
no sense, but
Pig herder.
it is an absolute great name. This story has 2 moments that are like just absolutely phenomenal in a very British humor, like Monty Python kind of way.
It's also the first mention of Arthur.
It's the first mention of Arthur, and in this specifically, and I think I read somewhere that it is the oldest written down Arthur story. I don't know the validity of that, but
Yeah.
supposedly. So Colhook is a cousin to King Arthur, and he goes to court to ask King Arthur to help him gain the hand of this giant's daughter named Olwen that he wants to marry. And when he arrives to court, there is am I misremembering?
No, someone tells him he has to marry Olwen,
Okay.
and he doesn't know, but he doesn't know who that is. but that's fine.
So
that's not a big deal.
He has
No.
to / wants to marry
Is it
Olwen.
Olwen the dad?
No, she's
No.
the daughter, the giant's daughter.
The dad is Ixabadin.
Yeah. Okay, that's right.
So this is so funny to me. Like
This is probably the funniest thing I think in the whole
so
story for me.
this is
All of the
this is a
Mabinogion.
this is a really stupid reference that I'm about to make, but it works to an extent. I remember this one commercial for Shark Week one year. That was this really stupid looking shark swimming towards the camera, and it had this stupid looking grin on its face, and its teeth going all everywhere. This really derpy looking shark, and they put this like really stupid laugh over it, and it was just like a 2-second loop of this shark swimming towards the camera and laughing, and it was probably like a 2-minute ad or something, where like it was one of the where at first it's like, oh that's funny, and like by time 3 you're laughing really hard, and then after like 5 or 6 of this shark loop, you're just like, oh my god, this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And then a couple more and you're getting furious at the TV that it's still doing this thing. And then there's like some weird trigger that happens, at least for me when I was watching this, where like after 12 times of this loop happening, it all of a sudden was the funniest thing that I've ever seen in my life. And it stayed that way, and I'm laughing out loud, and my then girlfriend had no idea what was happening. But anyways, there is a list of names when Colhook arrives at the court of King Arthur that goes on and on and on and on. And I found myself going through those exact same stages where at first it was like, oh, this is interesting, this is fun. And then I got just furious that this was
This is
still
Shark Week
going
all
on.
over again.
This was still going on, this stupid long list of names. And then it reached that point again where I was like, I don't know if anybody else is reading it like this, but this is comedy gold. Like there's so many stupid names, so long.
Yeah.
It's going on and on and on and on to this comedic, like, I don't know. That's how it struck me.
It literally mentions everybody in the court.
Literally everyone that is standing in that court.
It's supposedly Colhook standing there saying, and these are all the people there. And he just goes. It's pages and pages and pages and pages and
it's
pages.
like it's a comedy thing too. Like I mean, even Austin Powers does that. It's getting crowded in here.
Yeah.
Not you, number 2.
And-
not you. And he goes around the whole.
and for better,
It's like a bit.
That's what I mean. It's like it's so,
It is
it's
almost like a
so
bit.
absurd
It's
that he's listing the name of
Yeah.
every single person in the room. It just it killed me.
and
it
for
was so funny.
for better and for worse, he then gives like little details on people too, but not everyone. It's great and absurd.
It's absurdist comedy.
Yeah.
I don't know if that. I'm sure that's not how it was intended, but that is how I am reading it.
But then they've got to go. He's like, I've got to marry Olwen, and they're like, we don't know who that is. Nobody knows who that is. So they're like, well, let's look for a year. Let's look for a year.
Just for a year. We'll spend
And
a
then
year.
they look for a year, and they're like, we got nothing. We can't find anybody named Olwen.
Imagine this is the shittiest search party of all time.
got
Like,
nothing.
did you go out last night? No, I didn't. Did you? No, I
And
didn't.
then-
All right, what we got tomorrow?
We've got a year, man.
It's actually pretty funny because then Colhook's like, man, this sucks. I'm really mad. And Arthur's like, dude, wait, calm down. It's fine. He's like really embarrassed. But I think I actually read some stuff about this, that actually the giving of gifts by kings was like a really big deal. Like their whole bit. And you actually see that in the Mabinogion. Rhiannon's giving gifts out a lot. Branwen's giving gifts out a lot. It's a really big deal that you give gifts back out to your people, because then I guess that's kind of how you like keep your king thing going. So it'd be really bad if Arthur can't bestow the wife on his cousin. Even though it's like he's not really doing anything at this point. But then they're like, okay, let's gather our best guys and let's go find Olwen. So they travel off, I guess somewhere they didn't try in the year they were looking beforehand. And they see a castle or a fortress, and then they see a mastiff that's the size of like a horse.
Yeah.
And some farmers. And they're like, we're looking for Olwen. They're like, oh, she lives up there. And they're like, oh, cool, we're going to go get her. And he's like, I just wish you had said anything other than that, because that's like the worst news ever. There's a giant there, and he won't let anybody marry his daughter because he's going to die when his daughter gets married. And that's like, okay, well, that stinks. And then they want to go up there, but he won't let anyone in unless they do a trade. So then they have to pretend they do a trade, which is a whole thing. It goes on and on and on. But then they come in several times. Each time he throws a spear at them, they catch the spear and throw it back. And one got one time through the arm. And each time he's like, oh, why would you do this to me? I'm in such pain. One time through the arm.
Like,
one
you
time
throw a
through
spear at
the,
me.
Don't throw it at us.
eye. And he's like, you throw my spear at me. Drat you. And then finally, after the third spear's thrown, he's like, okay, we want to marry your daughter. And he was like, okay, the bride price for my daughter. And thus proceeds the longest and most insane list.
The best
This
ever.
is
so
this
good.
is
This
this is
is
part
the
two
best.
of this
Part
comedy
two of
gold.
the same. It's the same. Why does this go on so long?
But also his requests are like, you have to go find this guy named Fairfov over there, and in his beard is a tuning fork, and his tuning fork is one of a kind, and it's special, and it's impossible to get, and you won't be able to get it.
And then Kohuk says, I will get that, and it will be easy for me to
Yeah,
get.
I know that you might think it's impossible, but it will be easy for me.
And then the guy's like, well, you
you-
might get that, but you won't get Figglefuggins 5-starred harmonica that he keeps under his left pillow every night, and when he sings it summons a viper, and you it's impossible to get without killing him, and he can't die. And
Well,
he's like,
you might think it's impossible, but I can do it easily. And it goes on and on
Well,
and on and
pages
on
might
and
get
on.
pages
Yeah.
and pages.
I mean, I
of-
listened to the audiobook, and it was a 15-minute rant.
It's so good.
It's amazing.
It's so funny. It's another one of those where it goes on. It goes on for so long.
I did
that it
all of the
so
laundry. I did all of the
so
laundry.
funny.
All of the laundry
Yeah.
listening to that segment. I
One
was like,
whole laundry.
and I have a lot of little kids' clothes. I was like, wow, I'm on like the 7th pair of socks now. Like, this is going
But
on.
the main gist, though, is he's got to, like, farm some land, and then he's got to, like, he's got to get some beards from a robber's beard to then you make a leash out of the beard. And then from there, he's got to hunt a boar. They can only be killed by this one dog. He's got to get the dog. And then there's more details there, but it's like, it's basically on that. And then there's like, each one of those that I mentioned briefly, there's like 10 steps of different things you have to do to both complete the task and satisfy the bride price for this giant.
Well, and so Kohuk goes back to King Arthur and he
gotta
tells
think
him
that
all the
Kohuk
things that
is
he's
sitting
got to
there-
do.
He's probably sitting there and he's like, is he confident, or is he just like letting this dude ramble?
I think he's like, I'm
think
just going to tell Arthur to
Yeah, I
do all
think
this.
he's confident.
He's like, I don't.
Which is what happens.
He's confident because King Arthur is his cousin, and he goes up. Exactly, he goes up to King Arthur, tells him everything that he has to do, and King Arthur's just like, "Got you.
Yeah, we got this.
You-
And
we
it's,
do it.
but the amazing thing is, I don't think Kohuk does any of it.
No, I don't
He
think he
sends his
doesn't either.
knights out all over. He sends Sir Kay to go get the beard. He sends them all out. Arthur himself hunts the boar.
Yeah, no, all of the guys get in on
And
it.
Kohuk's like, I did my work.
Yeah,
That was a lot.
but then my third favorite funny moment in this is that everything gets done. This impossible series of tasks all gets accomplished, and Kohuk brings the news back to the giant, and the giant's reaction is essentially just like, well, shit. I
gonna die now.
this big like tirade of things, and he's just like, damn it. Should have made it a little harder.
Yep.
Oh well.
Okay. And then he dies, and then he marries his daughter.
You got me. All right. This is how it ends.
Yep. That's a
Absolutely
great
love it.
story.
It's a great
It's a great
phenomenal story. It's so funny.
Ugh.
I don't know if you guys have gotten this yet, but the Mabinogion is funny.
It's
It's
hilarious.
it's
It's
so
really
funny.
hilarious.
It's a comedy.
It's got a great sense of humor. And then the final story in the 4 independent native tales is the Dream of Runabui.
Which isn't the one where they certify that this could only have been written down, because he has a dream and he's like wandering through and he sees several different scenes, mostly with some very specific heraldry and costuming on several different nights. And it's like, and his robes were green, but his eyes, he had sapphire. And it goes on and on and on with the detail. So I guess it almost seems like an exercise in like, look what we can do now that we can write things down.
Right, yeah. Look what the stories we can tell.
It was very imaginative and lovely, but that's basically it.
Yeah, compared to a lot of the stories that came before it, it's not terribly memorable for me. I frankly can't remember much about it at all.
And it is only like, I think it is only like 5-6 pages.
Yeah,
but yeah.
It's fine. It's great.
Yep.
And then finally, we get to the 3 romances, and these are the kind of knightly tales from King Arthur's court. We have the Lady of the Fountain is the first one. Classic.
Yep.
Night.
We've got
Night
Owain.
story.
Owain is the main character here. So basically, I'm spacing on which, but one of the other knights, maybe it is Kay, actually goes off and fights a black knight and does a couple of the things, and he comes back because he gets his butt kicked, and then they're like, wow, that was crazy. So then Owain's like, I'll go fight him. They all go. He fights him, and then he ends up in this town. And turns out the knight he kills is this super hot lady's husband. And so she's like, oh, crap, my husband's dead. And then, Owain's like, we need to make this right somehow. And he befriends this young woman. And they make this plan to, like, hang out for a while so that then Owain can now marry this lady. And through some shenanigans, he ends up pulling it off, and the people of the town are like, that's fine. And ends up working out. But then he ends up befriending a lion, which is super cool.
Yeah, totally cool.
That was
Totally normal.
Yeah,
Lion
totally
in England. It's great.
Lion, lots of fighting with the lion, and he ends up winning a bunch of fights he wouldn't have if he didn't have the lion with him, which is cool.
Yeah, hell yeah. Animal companions, dude. All about it.
I love
Your fantasy is always better
Why
with
don't
animal
we
companions.
see more lion companions?
Well,
They have to eat a lot, I guess.
they have to eat a lot.
Yeah. But that's basically that one. It's fun.
It's a good one.
Yep.
My favorite of these is definitely Peredur, son of Efrog.
Yep.
Apologies.
It's very good.
It's so good, and it's essentially it's the entire story of Sir Percival, one of Arthur's greatest knights. And what was fun for me is I had a cassette tape when I was a boy that was a very abridged version of a lot of these classic King Arthur stories, and the Sir Percival story was one of them. And so I didn't get that Peredur was going to be Percival, and so it was very fun hearing the story and kind of piecing it together. Oh, why is this so familiar?
Yeah.
Well, it's because I listened to this. So I wore this cassette out as a kid.
The whole mom, like, always, do what you want, but also make sure you take stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, except for that one messed up piece of advice she gave him, like, about, like...
Lay with a woman whether she wants to
Yeah,
or
yeah.
not.
And the last note is... Yeah, take a woman whether she wants to or not.
Yeah, that's pretty messed up. And
like
Percival
seriously,
doesn't.
like he doesn't.
He
but like
doesn't
literally,
listen to
mom is
mom.
like low key, just like in the last note is just rape every girl you see.
Yeah,
like,
easy does it, mom.
she says that. It's
She
fine.
does. But it's a great story. Percival is he's one of Arthur's greatest knights, and he kicks a lot of butt in that story.
Yeah, he's known as one of the mightiest knights. It's really great too when he shows up to court. He comes in, he introduces himself, he's going out, and then it says a he-dwarf is like, "Oh, Sir Percival, not Sir Percival, but Peredur, you're so beautiful and wonderful, and we're so happy to see you." Then Sir Kay sees him's like, "You've been here for a whole year and you haven't said one thing to me. You come up bigging up this dude," and he kicks him across the room.
I love that.
And then
that's
the dwarf's
that's the inciting
and then
incident.
the
for
dwarf's
the whole
wife
story.
says,
basically,
"No."
and then the crazy thing is his wife, she dwarf, comes in and does the same thing, and he's like, "I'm kicking you too." And he kicks her.
But he kicks him and knocks him out for crying out loud.
But that's
Basically,
that's Peredur's Batman moment.
he decides to leave the court.
He goes on a quest and just kicks the shit out of every knight he comes to.
He does them, and he says when he kicks their butt, he sends them back to Arthur and says, "You tell yourself Peredur beat you up, and you pay homage to Arthur, and you tell Sir Kay that
I'm coming.
I've not forgotten. I have not forgotten your offense
what you
to
did
the
to the
dwarf."
dwarves.
It's great. And then it goes on. There's a great moment too where he's like working on a sword, and he says, "Break this sword in half." And he breaks it in half, and he says, "Now put it back together." And he puts it back together. He says, "Now break it in half." And he breaks it in half. He says, "Now put it back together." He puts it back together. And he says, "Now break it in half again." He breaks it in half, and then he can't put it back together. He says, "That's because you have 1/3 of your strength left to gain."
It becomes very shonen anime there.
I loved it when that happened. I was like, "What is happening right now?"
Of course, it's a training sequence out of nowhere. Yeah.
And you will be the strongest knight of ever times.
Peredur is awesome.
Yeah,
Sir Percival, Peredur, phenomenal story. And then the final story in the Mabinogion, from the three romances is Geraint, son of Erbin.
Yep.
Another kind of ridiculous story.
I really
It's a great
enjoyed this one. I really, really enjoyed this one, and it might have been my favorite. But Sir Geraint is a super butt-kicking knight. He comes to Arthur's court, kind of the way that a lot of these begin. But they've all left on a hunt. He's missed it. They've all left early. It makes a point to say that Queen Guinevere had been insisting on going on the hunt, but she's not up when they're leaving, and you know they ask Arthur, like, should we wake her, and he's like, nah, it's okay. And then so she's up late, so then her and Geraint are like, oh hey, let's wander off together. And again, another mischievous, well, I guess not a mischievous dwarf, but this is a mischievous dwarf where the other was a persecuted dwarf. But they're out there with Guinevere's maidservant, and the dwarf whips her. And he's like, I'm with that knight over there. And he whips her. He goes and then he's like, you need to, it's not right that you whipped this lady, and give me your name, and he won't. So then he goes to chase them off, ends up in a whole contest to avenge Guinevere's maidservant. And he teams up with Enid and her father to, it's the swallow contest, right? Because they win a swallow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Just it's not specified if it's a European or an African swallow. So we don't know the weight ratio there that it could carry, but it is a swallow.
But turns out this knight is very mighty. He has won this tournament for the past 2 years, and if he wins it the third year, he gets to keep the swallow forever.
Hot damn.
And he's going to give it...
That's a prize.
And he's going to give it to his lady. But now Geraint, who is somewhat infatuated with Enid, is like, well, I'm going to win this swallow for you. And also, I'm going to bring justice to Guinevere and her maidservant. They have a contest of arms. He attends himself well, but it's pretty evenly matched because the other knight is very formidable. When the father of Enid is like, this is the lance from my first ever joust. And he takes it and uses it and smites down the knight and ends up winning the tourney. Heads on back, sends him in really bad state to go back to Arthur. And when Arthur sees him, he's like, oh my God, you're really jacked up, my guy. Like, you look awful. And you here? Yeah, it's pretty funny. But then he comes back with Enid, Geraint in there, and they're like beloved at court. They become, Geraint ends up winning tons of tournaments. Enid is considered the most beautiful woman in the land, and they become very, very popular. Geraint is the son of a king from, is it Cornwall?
I think so.
Cornwall?
Yeah, I believe so.
So eventually his dad's getting old, sends for him, and he's like, all right, let's go. They take a group of them, and they go back. They go back there. They're super happy. Geraint's there. Geraint asks the knights to stay until his lands are secured. But they stay for a while. Things are good. They go home. When Geraint is so infatuated with his wife that he won't ever leave their room. They just stay locked up, hanging out all the time. And after a while, Geraint's like, people are like, this dude just stays in his room all the time. And this is kind of getting old. He won't do his king stuff. He's just chilling up in his room with his wife, and this is like not going to work. So Enid finds this out, realizes what's going on. Geraint's just like either doesn't care or is oblivious. And so she's really torn up. She's like, woe is me that I'm making things so sad for my husband. And he's sleeping with his bare chest, and she's up in their bed crying. And she says that basically, woe is me that I would make this man so sad. And he wakes up and he's like, oh my God, she's sleeping with someone else.
It's such a leap.
I know.
Such a leap.
You are cheating on me. He loses it. They get ready for a journey. And he's like, okay, you ride in front of me. And no matter what happens, don't talk to me. And
don't talk to me.
I'm going to ride back here. So they're riding. She sees 3 men waiting, and they're like, hey, we're going to go steal those horses. And she's like, and she runs back, and she's like, there's dudes up there. I'm so sorry. There's dudes. I know you said don't talk, but there's guys up there that are waiting in ambush. And he says, like, how dare you speak to me?
He rides up and kicks their ass.
3 dudes. This repeats 2 more times with 4 and 5 riders.
And she keeps disobeying.
Though. She keeps every time. he says the same thing. He was like, if you loved me, you wouldn't talk to me like I asked you not to talk to me, even though these robbers are waiting to come and kill us and take all the extra. Because they keep, the thing too is like, he keeps tying up all the new horses and sets of armor.
So he has like a ton of stuff.
Like 7 suits of armor behind. They're like, well, we're going to
So I'm just like, this is a lady and like 20 horses.
Jackpot.
Like, we could just take like half of them.
But each time he rides up and kicks their butt. So eventually they get to a town. And finally, she's like, I guess I don't know what to do. He's really not happy with me. Like, okay. And he's still like, screw you. You're cheating on me. So we're on like my pity party tour, basically.
Dumb.
So then this guy's like, hey, Need, like, you know, you're clearly single. Let's go. And she's like, well, actually, I'm here with my husband. And he's like, well, don't say anything and let's run off together. She actually doesn't say anything this time for a minute. Until right at the moment they're supposed to run away together. She comes and tells Geraint what's happening. He's pissed. But he goes and kicks that guy's butt, and then they get out of Dodge. And from there, they go on. He's looking rougher and rougher. He ends up fighting a knight that's really short and has a really hard time fighting him because he's so tiny, and they make a really big point because he's so hard to hit with the lance because he's so small.
His odd job fight.
But at this point, he's really jacked up and looking bad.
Small.
And somewhere in there, they run into Arthur's court. He doesn't want to go see them. They're really happy to see him. He's avoiding it. And they're like, bro, you need to like
chill.
Get yourself. And he's like, we're going to go. And he's like, you're not going anywhere till you're like healthy. So they finally wait. They get healthy. Then they're like, okay, we're getting back on this journey. Like, where are you guys going? He was like, doesn't matter. We're going. They keep going. Eventually, they run into a little town. Geraint, though, is smote down. He's and I'm yada-yadaing a little bit of this, but he's smote down. He's like basically in a coma. And then the man there's again like, well, I'm going to marry you, Enid, because, you know, you're free now. And she's like, no, eventually cries out as he's like trying to have his way.
Isn't he like faking?
No, well, it's not that he's faking. He's in a coma, and then he wakes up from the coma, like basically out of death, and smites the man down. They run back into the short knight, who has become his buddy. No. And it turns out gets his brother involved too. They get out of there and they're doing okay. And then it ends with this funny little story where as they're traveling, which I guess this is like the happy ending, they're like, oh, there's a magical carnival over there in those bushes, basically. And he's like, what? They're like, no one ever comes out. There's like games and jousting. We don't know because no one ever comes back. And he's like, and Geraint's like, I will go in. And he goes in. And then he like sits in the head boss's chair, and he's like, "Why would you sit in my chair?" And he's like, "Because I do whatever I want." And he's like, "Okay, we have to have a joust." And then they joust. Geraint finally defeats him, and he says, "Like, you have to let all these people free." And then all the people are freed from the little magical secret carnival thing.
Right.
And they come out, and then it's kind of dissipated, and there's our happy ending. And also when Enid cries out when he's in his sort of coma, he does at that point also realize that
I've been a massive dick.
I've been insane. She does still love me.
She was like so insanely faithful to him for like this entire time.
Utterly insanely
he like
faithful.
Literally fantasized some just crazy narrative and then like literally went off the rails.
Would have been extremely justified in actually leaving him.
Yes.
And yeah.
It got to a weird spot.
Maybe at the 20 horses part.
You know, it ends well. You know, could they have just had a conversation? Sure. And yeah, that's it.
Would it have been as funny? No.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So that's the Mabinogion, fellas. Yep. I love this. I love this series of stories. We talk about the power of short stories. We talk about how awesome anthologies are, and that's what this is. This is one of the oldest, like, fantasy short story anthologies out there. Wildly underrated, wildly underread. So check it out. Again, we read the Jones and Jones edition. There's nothing wrong with the Lady Charlotte Guest edition. Just know that it is a little censored.
Yep, censored.
And there is a phenomenal newer translation available on audiobook for free with your Audible subscription as of when we're recording this. So yeah, any final thoughts? What's your top of your head favorite story? Sam, go.
Yeah, I mean the all the crazy things that they had to do to get that lady to marry him.
Yeah, Cole Hook and Owen is your favorite. Yep.
Oh yeah.
I really did love the Geraint, even though it's ridiculous. And then that and the third branch.
Yep. The mouse.
Mouse.
Being hanged. Yeah. I think I love the first two stories of the first branch of the story of Pwyll.
Yeah.
I love those two very much. I love Culhwch, and I love Peredur.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Dope.
all right. Ladies and gentlemen, that has been another episode of Under Towers Podcast.
Give us a like and
Yeah,
subscribe.
please, if you've enjoyed the show, give us a like, give us a subscribe,
Tell your friends.
write us a comment. Yeah, share with your other nerdy friends.
Shoot us an
And,
email at undertowerspodcast@gmail.com and complain or give us praise. We'll answer questions if you have them.
Yeah, and listen to Horsebread. Listen to Hole Dweller. He does our music that you hear at the beginning and the end of this episode. And we love y'all. We'll see you at the next episode. Maria.